The cloud. Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Denmark, just out of sight of Copenhagen, just to say something.
And today in our podcast, we were going to talk about, and the last one we alluded to it, but being able to document how much time / money you save when you write a script. And we were going to say, let's just talk to the best practices on how you go about it, because some of the stuff is very clear, I think, but some of the other things you might want to include, other than just time and money, right? There's other things, metrics that you'd want to make sure that you report on, so to speak, to either your boss or your department or whatever. Obviously, one of them is just, do well. And Jackie, this is one of them is it just you doing the work, or is it you and or other people, or a combination of you and other people, right? Because if it's just you, it's a lot easier. If it's other people, you really want to get some sort of estimates overall from everybody, and then take the average is what I would do. Take the median or mean, depending on if one person is ridiculously slow, right? You might want to take the median instead of the mean. But anyway, you take some sort of a summary variable of the time. And make sure when you go through, you ask them clearly of is it number of times per day, per week, per month, and get a nice understanding of the cadence on average of how frequent people are doing it, and then how long it takes them to do it, right? Those are your two really key metrics.
Yeah, and it's something that's easily done, or easily enough done, and when you do the math on it, you get some really, really great numbers without you don't need many people using a lot of time for it to quickly accumulate up to some high numbers. As we've talked about a few times, I did it at one point, and I think I saved a person maybe 3.5 minutes or something like that on a task. It wasn't a great task. It wasn't something they were using their entire day on or anything, but they used maybe 25 minutes, and I cut off 3.5 minutes. And to someone going out into the field, whatever, 3.5 minutes, it's half a smoke or whatnot. It doesn't seem as if it matters, but it should when you actually put it together, because they were 50 people doing it, and they were sharing maybe 10 workstations. And some of them were waiting on each other, and they were doing it in almost the same time frame, 3 times a day. And so it's maybe a task that was done 40 times between all of them in a week. So in 1 week, 40 times 3.5 minutes, that pretty quickly meant that, 1 week, one task, I'd made a good amount of time on that exact thing. I had made maybe 2 hours, or saved the company about 2 hours or something like that, on just that one thing. It wasn't a big thing. It was a matter of them printing something, but still.
So let's follow your example here to talk through, because it's just nice to have an example. The other one, sure, you could say, well, in 10 years, it'll save X amount of time, but most part, 10 years is probably too long, right? Mm-hmm. I would feel very comfortable. Of course, it depends on the history, how long it's been being done. But generally speaking, I'd say projecting out 1 year, if it's something you've been doing for a while, projecting out 1 year, I think that's a fair time frame to at least point to. What do you think?
Yeah, that's at least one way of doing it, and it does depend on the task or the amount of people you save the time for, because later on with the same thing, I had something go out to almost 2,000 people in the company, and it was only saving them 48 seconds, and that's a funny number, but that was what it was. times 2,000 people
Yeah.
3
But
times a day. And just to get into it, and there it became something that I could count on a monthly basis, because
yeah,
it
right.
actually became more than what I was using time on. It was all of a sudden I'd saved the company more time than what I was there. So if I
Right.
was there 40 hours a week, I was saving the company more time with that one automation piece than I was actually there. And
Which is, I think, it's a critical thing to bring up, though, because we often think about what we do day in, day out, and how much time it'll save us. Yet, often finding, even if it's a small thing, finding it where there's a big multiplier of people behind it, right? That can really quickly add up to a lot of time saved.
yeah, and of course, when presenting this to people who view stuff like this differently, they don't compare how much if I save someone a minute, that's not correlating to me using a minute on something. They didn't see those things being the same value or whatever. I the persons that I try to use this data with, or whatever you might, how you would say that, or they didn't see me saving someone 3.5 minutes as
Mm.
me earning 3.5 minutes of my own salary, so to speak. It's just that's fine. He can do something else for those 3.5 minutes.
Which is another critical point to say, when you're extrapolating over other people, you want to have some idea of the let's stick with simple, an hourly, how much the company is paying per hour for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're making, let's say, $20 an hour, in reality the company more often than not is paying like $40 an hour,
Yeah.
because of all the taxes and insurance, all the other junk. But if you make $100 an hour, you can't apply that $100 an hour, or it really is $200 an hour, across all those people, because they're not making that same rate, right? And it can go vice versa, right? It could be more expensive, right? It just depends. Make sure you understand what the average person is making per hour.
Yeah.
The other critical one, which we haven't really talked about, is to make sure, and it's silly, but make sure you subtract how long it took you to create it, right?
Yeah.
And also a little bit of maintenance here and there, right? Generally speaking, though, that's, it's for a lot of stuff, it's a few hours, right? It's almost not even worth mentioning.
No, and as you also mentioned just a moment ago, with if you make your time frame like a year,
Yeah.
and I think in Denmark, a normal man year would be 1920 hours or something. That's the amount of hours that you would normally work in a year. And if you get anything like that, close to that, or whatever calculation you do, um, comparing the hours to hours is probably not someone in a management position would do, because
Yeah.
if
Good point.
these people over here are doing something completely different, you saving them a small amount of time is not the same as it being worth the same amount of time of your work, or whatever way you want to compare it. So yeah, I do get what you're saying, Joe. That
Well, when I brought up the gear, I was just saying, if like you had yours down to monthly, but I'm just saying, like, once you got the figure for the month, you could then, I think, say, project out a year, so multiply it by 12 and say, in a year, right? You don't want to go 10 years, because things are going to change, right? You're not going to save that
yeah.
much money. But the 1 year is, I think, the upper limit that, on average, that I'd feel safe projecting out to, unless you're doing something changes, very rapidly. But usually that's not what we're doing.
No, but also when you get to right now, we are just talking about time saving and or money saving or whatever it might be, and how to document it. Those are so easy to kind of extract out of your day to day. How long did this task take?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it for yourself, of course you might not be able to go and sell that I'm saving myself time. You should probably show that by just getting more done. That's probably a good idea. But if, as the other part of what we were talking, if you're actually saving other people time,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I think it becomes or should be more interesting to companies.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had different types of experience, both of us, with companies being both shown and told and whatnot, that even being presented with something fully working and still not understanding fully the benefit, or not wanting to, or however you put those things. And you could document those to from here to who knows when, without probably moving or swaying people who don't want to understand automation. So how should you then document the time you save, the company, or things like that? Who are you supposed to present it to? And I recently learned my current job that uh, this is just one model. People have these in it. People have color profiles like
Oh,
me.
right. Yeah.
So um, detail detail oriented, and that color would be presented as blue, and you always have other colors that complement each other and stuff like that, but you have specific things that you focus more on. And someone in management might be more red, which is more like be 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 quick, be bright, be gone, something like that, where they want to see what you have, but they don't really want the deep numbers. So you coming with an Excel sheet showing, oh, see here, I'm saving 3 minutes times the 50 people,
Yeah.
that would be that. Then if I time that by each day they do it, then this, then that. And at the end, they're just like, not really seeing it anymore, not following along, too much information, whatever, where you might be better off just selling them with a pie chart or something. See here how much of my of whatever. I'm not
No,
saying pie charts are the best way of doing it, but
but Jackie, my background, spent I don't know over 15 years of market research and writing reports, and I can guarantee you're spot on. Some people like tables and seeing numbers, but the vast majority, they want charts, right? They want some sort of a bar graph or a pie chart, whatever, but they want a visual display of the numbers, not the actual numbers, more often than not. Everyone can understand the graph, but not everybody can understand like table, the numbers themselves. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
yeah. So one thing is how you document it, but another thing is probably also how well you use the documentation to present it or
Yes,
sell it or
convey. Yeah.
yeah,
Persuade.
yeah. That's probably a good way of putting it, because you can make your script or your automation, or you can make documentation for it, and you can make it log every action that it takes, and that would take you longer to program. And but if all those numbers, all those logs, all those things, who are presenting it to? Right? It's like, unless you've been told, or unless you are in a situation where there is something that you already do, or unless that's a selling point of your automation, mm, nobody's probably wanting to see that. They want those e- easy to view comparisons, as you said yourself, Joe. Right? It's able to do it quicker than I'm able to do it. It's able to do it less error prone if you can somehow document that it will be better at doing that compared to 10 people doing it.
That was actually, I want to interrupt you there because that was what I was thinking about when you were talking about your script where you went around and had, I forget how many, 2,000, not the 2001, the one before that.
Yeah, the 50, yeah.
Okay, so 50 people. Did you ask them how often, like when they thought they had an error in it and either had to correct it or didn't know they had an error? Did you try it at all to?
When first analyzing what they did and having a few of them test the first piece of what I had done, because it was a very cumbersome way of getting stuff printed. They first needed to collect specific data and clump it together and then go through 3 different types of printing software interfaces to get it out. Often they might have missed something on one of the steps, or they misclicked, or they were slightly interrupted and had closed the window because the phone rang or whatever.
Well,
so I didn't have any numbers on it, but I just knew from that it had happened frequently enough for them to almost all have 1 or 2 stories of it happening. So
the other one, sorry, because it made me think about this. The time, and I bet this is just common nature, right? You ask people, how long does it take you to do this? And they will tell you, of course, usually, and they'll time it, but they'll do it as fast as they can, right? They'll give you an estimate of like the bare minimum, right? And they didn't get distracted. They didn't, like you said, right? Even if you do it wrong, it's not even the wrongness, but the second you take your focus off something and you come back, it takes you a while to get back into it. And that's just human nature, right? So it's not something that's probably, generally speaking, included, but you might add 10 to 15% time on average or total for just human, not OCD, the opposite, monkey brain, right?
Yeah.
The everything's going on and you get distracted and it slows down, because we know that happens, yet it's not going to be part of that metric that you did. Like, that's the most conservative estimate, because everyone like, oh, let me time it, and they go as fast as they can. And you're like, oh, it was 43 seconds. Well, that was going with you paying attention with no interruptions. You focused, which, the computer didn't happen to hiccup, which happens, right, in real world. So.
Yeah, and one of the things I did, at least when I made the white paper about how much time I had saved that specific company, I tried to actually use these where someone had sat down with focus and done it as quickly as they could, because I wanted the data to be as it was done enough and it took such a short time that I didn't want to just use something mediocre data-wise. I wanted to say, here, with people doing it as quickly as they could, with focus, they would use 48 seconds on it and then calculate from there, and still got a great number. And I could have said it took a minute and had earned 12 seconds extra on each multiplier. And of course, but I was happy with the number that I got, and it was big enough. And it should be, if it's done just enough or by enough people, you don't need many seconds to actually make it worth a company's while, so to speak. It really should sell itself, but it just doesn't always do that.
Yeah.
Saving someone 30 seconds is, for a human, when you tell them that,
right,
it's like nothing.
Right.
But from what I learned by reading about a web page design and SEO and stuff, is that if a web page, when you click a link, hasn't started showing visual signs of loading within 40 milliseconds,
Wow.
then you will doubt that your click had worked. If the page hasn't loaded an element within 400 milliseconds, which is still under half a second,
Yeah.
then there is 10% chance that people will actually leave the site.
Wow.
So when you say that you saved people 30 seconds, they think it's nothing. But when they are actually at the computer, 30 seconds is
An eternity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that was a good overall overview, right? Is the approach for it.
Sure.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Catch up with you next week.
Bye.
Cheers.